Well, hello everyone, and welcome on board the Sunrise Safari. My name is Scott, and as you can see, we've got off to a great start. There's a young elephant bull in front of us, and we will get you some better views of him shortly. He's just moving, feeding slowly through this misty morning. It's about 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a very moody morning here in the Sabi Sands on Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves. I'm teamed up with Bryan on camera this morning, and James is also headed out with Andrew on the other vehicle, and Brent is out on tracking team hoping to find some animals for us. One thing that is going to be a bit tricky today is that the Game Drive channel is not working at all, so we've only got comms between the three of us, so hopefully one of us finds some interesting tracks or sightings that we can share with one another, but it is going to be impossible to communicate with the other guides, and therefore hopefully we do get lucky, because it is usually so important to be able to communicate with the other guys in order to share information on where animals are heading and what's been found. Nikki and Tara are in the final control room. And as we reposition, would like to welcome anybody who may be watching the safari for the first time. That this is a live safari, so it's happening this very second in Africa. But I'm sure James can tell you a little bit more about how to send through questions and comments, but he would like you to jump onto his vehicle quickly, because he's got a beautiful view of the sunrise and another surprise waiting for you. So we'll see you shortly. Enjoy, and we will have this elephant waiting for you when you come back.
Good morning everybody. Welcome to Jigger, and my name is James Hendry, and you're on a live safari, as Scott's just told you, and while he's with the elephants, we're with 5 marabou storks and sunrise that will make you weep. Bursting through the mist is the golden orb of the African sun on what is a spectacularly beautiful morning. Welcome to it. I have Andrew on camera with me today. Andrew is dressed like a bank robber today for some reason. There is no explaining some people. Remember that this is an entirely interactive experience. It is live. That sun is coming up as you're watching it. Well, you're probably seeing it about 12 seconds after I am. But please send through your questions and your comments to hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting, or questions at wildearth.tv if you're on the email. And we're just going to sit in silence for the next 20 seconds and enjoy the sounds and the astonishing sight of the sun coming up. So everybody, you can hear some francolins, you can hear some crested barbets, you can hear some starlings, woodpeckers, water thickneys, doves, it's just really spectacular. Well, as the sun comes up, my plan is to head off towards the east. Brent certainly has gone off there to see if he can find some tracks of some lions, and I haven't had any lions for a while, so I'm hoping to see some today. But for the moment, I'm just going to sit here while that sun, I hope that the picture on your screens is an accurate rendition of the absolute magnificence of what Andrew and I are looking at. Andrew, this might be the best yet. What do you say?
It's got to be close.
I might actually have to take a photograph. And while we're looking at that magnificent sun, you have seen the marabou storks. They're not having a morning swim for the sake of it. They are, in fact, trying to catch the last of the catfish before they burrow under the mud for the worst of the dry season. And you see, I think that some of them are probably surviving because they're so large that these marabou storks will struggle to contain the sort of, or to eat them. They'll struggle to fit them into their beaks. But once they're into the mud, and once the mud dries, then of course they'll be okay until the rains come. Remarkable fish, the catfish, able to survive in extremely dry conditions by sort of exuding a film of probably fairly evil-smelling mucus, and they then reside in the dry mud until and go sort of dormant, like a hibernation, until the conditions become more favorable when the rains come. Andrew, I've just taken an award-winning photograph. I believe that my fame and fortune is going to issue from that award-winning photograph. I'll show you my award-winning photograph, everybody. Try not to be too jealous.
Very decent.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I, of course, am not a particularly good photographer, but I do like to take pictures of this magnificent landscape that we find ourselves in. And it's a misty morning. I'm not really sure why it's so misty. It was quite a chilly night, but a very warm day yesterday, with some very moisture-laden clouds in the evening. The marabou stork, in case you're wondering, well, you probably are, if you don't know, is normally a scavenger. So while they are testing out these catfish here to see if they can find one that is not too big for them to swallow, while I was saying, they are trying to catch fish that are small enough for them to swallow, and as Cecilia has commented, as the light brightens, so the immense ugliness of the marabou stork. I mean, it's quite an endearing ugliness. Of course, cute means ugly but endearing, and I suppose there is a certain cuteness about these marabou storks. Somebody pointed out yesterday that they're part of the ugly five, which I think is an extremely nasty designation for any animal, but apparently the rest of the members of that ignominious group are the hyena, the wildebeest, what was the other one?
Warthog?
I think the warthog, that's right, and there's another one that I'm missing out there. But they really are a very funny-looking bunch of birds, these. And it must be very difficult for them to be standing where they are, because all this food is there for them to eat, but most of it is too large. I think all of the edible-sized ones have probably been taken. So you can just see them probing away there. And now you can hear the doves in full chorus, ringneck doves. This is the loudest dawn chorus I've heard for many months. Oh, this is beautiful. And I mentioned that it was a little bit cold this morning, And for those of you who live in the northern hemisphere, or perhaps in very south of South America, the idea of cold is not something, the relationship, or your idea of cold compared with what our idea of cold is, are two totally different things. So Joel in New York, while we look at those noisy Egyptian geese in the dawn, you want to know if we ever see snowflakes here. Joel, it doesn't ever get nearly cold enough for snowflakes here. The coldest temperature we had this year was 4 degrees Celsius, which is really not very bad at all. It's just a little bit chilly, and I mean, I haven't had to wear long pants at all this year, and that's not because I'm some kind of rugged ranger. It's simply because it just doesn't get that cold here. So Joel, there's actually no word in the local indigenous language, which is called Tsonga or Shangaan. There's no word for snow, as far as I'm aware. So that tells you how much snow we get out here. And in terms of temperature, I would say, Andrew, would you say about 16 today?
Nice and warm.
Maybe 14. It's now starting to warm up again. Maybe 14 degrees Celsius, which is about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm not mistaken. You can hear a hoopoo going. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. That sunrise just gets better and better and betterer. I might have to take another award-winning photograph, Andrew. So while we're looking at this quite stunning sunset and the mist slowly rising, Lucy, you want to know about time changes, and for those of you who don't know, the best times to go on safari, of course, is just as it's getting light. And just when it's getting light. And Lucy, on Friday we are going to change the times. So everybody, Friday the 28th, we are going to change the times to half an hour earlier, just so that we get out in the real dawn light, and then half an hour later in the afternoon safari. So we will be starting at 6 o'clock our time, Central African time, on Friday the 28th, and going out in the afternoons at 3:30 Central African time. So thanks for that, Lucy. Thanks for asking. Thanks for reminding us. And that, everybody, just as it gets hotter, in the heat of the midday, you want to try and avoid that sort of heat because animals aren't doing much, especially the cats. And then at the other end of the scale, you want to the lions start to get active as it gets dark, and so you want to be able to take drive during that time. And same in the morning, really. This mist seems to be getting slightly thicker, eh, Andrew? Absolutely beautiful. We're just looking at these marabou stalks, and Anna-Marie, your question is, are they really 6 feet tall? Anna-Marie, they're nowhere near 6 feet tall. I'm not sure where that came from. Andrew, how tall are you? About 6'3"?
6'1".
6'1". Andrew is 6'1", and they're about a third the size of the marabou stalk here. Maybe you're thinking of a saddle-billed stork, which is a bit taller. but they're also not 6 feet tall. Maybe if you stretch them a bit. So these guys are probably only about 2.5 feet off the ground. If they stand dead straight, they may reach up to 4 feet, perhaps. The saddlebill stork, which is quite tall, could possibly, a tall one, reach 5 feet, but not 6 feet, no. I am a diminutive 5'8", but I think I'm well taller than most of the birds out here, but for the ostrich, of course. Not even Andrew is taller than an ostrich. And while we watch the marabou storks trying to eat the catfish, Zoot from New England, and thank you, Zoot, for telling us where you're from. Please, everybody, do tell us where you're from. It's lovely to hear which part of our blue planet you happen to be watching us from. Zoot, you want to know, would the catfish be preying on anything that comes into the water? No. Catfish are sort of scavengers, bottom feeders, and so they won't be threatening anything, I don't think, that comes in here. Maybe the odd very small, small invertebrate. I mean, I imagine should a waxbill find itself tumbling into the middle of the water, it might be in a bit of trouble. A waxbill's a tiny little bird. But otherwise, no, I don't think so, Zoot. I don't think they're going to eat anything. There are certainly some predatory things that live in little puddles like this, something like the marsh terrapin, which is like a freshwater turtle, and they might grab something that came down to drink, maybe a small bird or something like that. But the catfish are more scavengers. You can see there that Egyptian goose, which is about the size of some of the biggest catfish, is very comfortably wandering around in the water. It's not very nervous. It would be slightly nervous of the marabou storks and their spear-like bills, but it won't be afraid of any of the catfish. And if I'm not mistaken, those geese are eating algae. They're trying to pick up bits and pieces of algae, perhaps the odd invertebrate, but I think they largely eat algae. And there is no shortage of algae in a vastly diminishing cesspit like this. And that, of course, is because as it concentrates the water, so the actual water content becomes smaller, and the nutrients, I mean, there's toxic nutrients in many respects, so the nutrient content of the water gets larger, with the buffalo dung and elephant dung that fills it, and also now catfish dung and various other kinds of dung, and that will be, in turn, spawn an algal bloom, which the geese will enjoy very much. This just gets better and better and better. Beautiful, Andrew. You might get an award for this too. I may reward you with a muffin today at breakfast, although you'll probably have to make it yourself. And you can still hear the francolins going crazy all around us. And starlings. Woodpeckers. I can even hear some squirrels alarm calling. The other thing to just quickly note, everybody, is that the game drive radio. Now, this is an important thing that if you're perhaps a new viewer that you need to understand. The game drive radio is a radio that puts us in contact with all the other game drives in the area. And as Scott has mentioned, apparently it's not working. And so we are on our own out here. And I find that quite exciting, I must say. So what we're going to do is enjoy the rest of this little sunset and sunrise, Andrew and I. It is coming up in the east, Andrew. It's not a set, it's a rise at this stage. We're going to head across to Scott. I think we're going to move on and see if we can find some lion tracks. So we'll head across to Scott and see what he's found. I think he's at an unusual waterhole. I'm not sure what that means. And we'll see you just now.
Welcome back, everyone. And not quite as misty here. We're on much higher ground than where James is currently. And it sounds like you've enjoyed a wonderful sighting with him. I've never once been able to show marabou stalks to any of you guys. So very happy that James managed to do that this morning, and I'm sure it's another bird for your bird lists. And if you haven't started your bird list yet, I suggest you start straight away with marabou stalk on the top. This is Sydney's dam. Sadly, we can't get any closer. There's about 15 or 20 hippos in there, and it is just north of our northern boundary road on Djuma, quite far west. And I got brought here because I was looking for tracks of the Nkahuma pride in the hope that they would come back east from Sibambili, where they were actually seen last night interacting with the Mangan pride or the Salala breakaway pride. So it's the same name it's two different names for the same pride. It's a pride of 13 lions, so twice the size as the Nkahuma pride. And the update that I got was simply that they were interacting. I don't think that they had a big fight or a battle, but I know the Sibambili guides and guests did enjoy a wonderful bush dinner last night, and while they were at their bush dinner under the stars, they were entertained by two different prides of lion who were probably having kind of a vocal standoff, I'm guessing. But the guys are tracking them. I misinformed you earlier. We don't have a game drive channel on Djuma, but the Arethusa game drive channel is still working. So there are lion tracks across on Sibambili and Arethusa, and we're going to head across there now in the hope that we can find them. I'm sure you all agree that these misty mornings make for some beautiful, beautiful scenery. And while you were enjoying that beautiful scenery with James, sadly the elephant bull that we started with changed his mood and started heading off quite quickly through some thick vegetation. He wasn't
Hello everybody, welcome back. Scott is in a notoriously difficult area. Sorry about that. We are now on the wall of Gowrie Dam, and we're going to head down towards Twin Dams eventually. That is because Brent has already done the northern and eastern boundaries, and there are no lions coming across. So that is slightly disappointing, I must say. I know Scott was in the far west of Djuma looking for some lion tracks, but it has been such a spectacular morning so far, and we will attempt to maintain that level of beauty as we go through the African wilderness. Beautiful fresh smells of the morning, and mainly because the air is so moisture laden at the moment. And Andrew, I can never remember that word. What is, I'm sure some of our viewers will know, there's a word for the smell of the earth when it's rained on it, and that's the kind of smell that we're getting at the moment, a very subtle one. And I can never remember what that word is. Look at that humble dove thereupon. There is a ring-necked dove. So we're just looking at a ring-necked dove, which we hear all the time. They go bloop, 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 and we never seem to look at them. But that is what a ring-necked dove looks like. So named, Andrew, because it has a
ring neck.
Correct. Well done. Okay. Nice question from Kevin. Well, we've driven away from Gowrie Dam, and you want to know what happens when that water dries out. What happens to the catfish, A, and B, how do they get there? Now, Kevin, this is a great mystery that I think for many years I certainly didn't understand. And basically what happens is some of those catfish will remain. They'll secrete that mucus over their bodies and then go into dormancy in the mud. And when the rain comes, it'll soften the sort of dry mud around them, and they'll spawn again, and they'll lay eggs and have little baby catfish. Otherwise, apparently the eggs can also stick to the legs of birds, and so when birds fly from waterhole to waterhole, they do drop off eggs. And that's, I mean, if you build a dam in an area like this, or in fact in any area in South Africa, it will eventually be inundated with various kinds of fish, from tilapia to catfish to various other freshwater fishes. And that comes from the eggs that travel probably in the gut of birds as well, and also on their legs. When they stand on the vegetation, the eggs tend to stick to their feet, and I think that's an evolutionary strategy for moving around the place, and that's basically how these waterholes get their fish. Thank you, Kevin. That's a really good question, and one that certainly as a child confused me profoundly. Continues to bathe the sun in an amazing golden halo, except it's turning more from gold now to sort of honey. Got much more yellow. Some hyena tracks on the road. Hyenas, of course, will spend an enormous amount of time just walking the roads, because it's easy to walk on a road rather than through the bush, smelling, trying to find little bits and pieces to eat. They're not great hunters in this particular area. They're far more scavengers than they are hunters, but in some areas of the world they will hunt. Unplugged myself. There we go, I'm back. Thank you, Lucy in South Bend. I think it's Indiana, is it? Thank you for your confidence-boosting assertion that you think Scott and I will manage to find some animals despite the fact that we don't have a radio going. Well, I hope you're correct, and thank you for your confidence. There are some buffalo. Andrew, do you see them?
Mm-hmm.
They're not far away from us. Some old buffalo bulls sniffing into the dawn. Look at them smelling. They will always do that just to try and make sure what we are. Their smelling senses are so much more important to them than ours are. These chaps will be happy to have have made it through another night unmolested by lions. You can see this fellow looks like he's got sort of whiskers. He's going grey about the jowls. And he's also, if you saw, when he looks at us again, in fact, even on this side, his ears have been torn to pieces. Look at his left ear, the ear on the right of your screen. That's remarkable. That could well be from some kind of predator attack early in his life, and also from just walking through the thorns, maybe running through the thorns and getting his ears stuck. He's just testing the air all the time. And it's so interesting, they will sit and they'll watch us. They know their eyes are good, their ears are good, but as soon as they pick up the scent of human being, they start to react like he's reacting now. Just makes him very, very uncomfortable. That's not a francolin, it's a drongo, mimicking a francolin. So I say happy to have made it through the night, because of course that's when they are most threatened. As you all know, that is when the lions start to move in the dead of the night. And that's when a big buffalo like this is under the most threat. Lions will think twice about attacking a group of buffalo bulls like this. It's certainly not to say that it doesn't happen, and that happens often. But this is even though these guys are old and starting to come toward the end of their lives in the bush, they're still formidable foes for a pride of lions. But if a lion can kill a buffalo, obviously the amount of meat is hugely rewarding. That chap looks like an old judge. They say buffalo look at you as though you owe them money. I think that fellow doesn't look like that at all. He looks like he's delivering some kind of a judgment. We get lots of questions about how dangerous buffalo are. I had one yesterday. I've had many before. In Virginia, in Kentucky, who we've definitely spoken to before. I think I made the poor joke about Kentucky in Virginia. Very poor joke. Sorry about that, Andrew. You would like to know, will the buffalo ever attack the vehicle? Virginia, it has happened once or twice, but that's normally when the buffalo are being harassed by lions. Then what they do is you might find that they would become so irritated that any kind of increase in pressure that they feel, they will vent their anger on. So I have been around, I've never been hit by a buffalo myself, but I've been around vehicles that have been hit by buffalo. It's not particularly dangerous for vehicles because the buffalo are not quite strong enough to tip a vehicle over. They certainly give it a big knock. But in this sort of situation, a buffalo, you can see behind them, they're not cornered at all, and while they're trying to ascertain whether we're a threat or not, their first reaction on perceiving a threat will be to run away. So the only time that they would ever go for a vehicle would be if they felt threatened. So the only time I've ever seen it happen is when they're being harassed by lions, and the vehicle is sort of an outlet of frustration, and also, sometimes the vehicle can just be in the wrong place, and the buffalo will try and move it into the right place. Little dawn oxpecker there, you can see on the back of that buffalo. And you can see over the years the oxpeckers have sheared off quite a lot of the hair that covers a buffalo bull. And he's just flattening his belly. That's quite interesting. He's flattening his belly against the buffalo there, and mainly, I think, to get warm. It is such a remarkable symbiotic relationship, that, and we don't often comment on it too much. The fact that those birds have evolved to live on different animals and eat the ticks that affect them, and that the buffalo show absolutely no form of irritation with them, I think it's just amazing. Andrew, I don't know if you want to try, perhaps get into the tree behind us, to the left. There's some alarming birds there, and I think they're probably chin spot batises. So I'm afraid those birds have gone, but just a beautiful size picture of the sun there, and you can just hear them going. Little bird party going on here. Lots of birds. So Terry in Santa Ana, very nice question. We're just following on the discussion of the buffalo and whether they would threaten a vehicle or not. And Terry, you want to know what kind of behavior they would exhibit were they to start feeling threatened by us. Terry, the first thing they would do, of course, would be to run away. That's what the buffalo would do. A buffalo's default reaction is to get out of any danger state. It's not to attack. And this is a discussion, in fact, we had it around the campfire last night. Buffalo have developed this tremendous reputation that they're dangerous, mainly from people who hunt them. If you hunt a buffalo and wound it especially, it will go down into some thick bush, and then it will wait for you. And if you happen to still be trying to stalk it, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. They are not inherently more dangerous than anything else out here, and their default reaction is always to move away from danger. That is the default reaction of all animals out here. And as long as you realize that as a human being, you represent the apex predator, and that is why that animals are afraid of you, as long as you realize that, obviously there are abhorrent situations that are very difficult to interpret, but as long as you realize that animals are seeing you as the apex predator, it's really not a particularly dangerous place to be out here. That said, you can get yourself into trouble by mistake, and we obviously try and avoid that studiously. And you look like you want to move the camera. You want to show us something?
No, I'm just looking for more birds, but I can't seem to find anyone.
All right. Okay, I think we'll leave these beefaloes to themselves. We'll press on. We're on the central sort of road of Djuma, and then we're going to turn south down towards an area called Twin Dams, which is now a twin dust bowl. There is no water there left at all, but there's a very beautiful drainage line nearby, and perhaps we'll pick up some other tracks. Here we go. Very glad that Giga is starting. This morning we came out, put the key in the lock, and it was dead, stone dead. And I think that was because we were using the lights to work on it last night, and perhaps that's why the battery went flat. But luckily the camera is powered by a battery bank that looks like it could power a small town, so we just jumped the car off that. Marvelous morning. Somebody did send through the answer to my question. The smell of rain as it hits the ground, which is something similar to what we're smelling now, is petrochore, apparently. Petrochore. Andrew, you know exactly what I'm looking at, don't you?
That I do.
There we go. Look at that spider's web, everyone. That looks like an enormous tropical tent web spider. It may be a couple of tropical tent web spiders. Just catching some of the mist, as the mist is burnt off by the sun. So some of these spiders' webs have caught pieces of the mist. Isn't that beautiful? So the answer to petrichor came from a number of you. I'm just going to try and remember them. Anne and Carol specifically said that it comes from a number of researchers that were studying the effects of rain on the earth. I'm not sure where they were researching it, but Anne and Carol, I think you're in Memphis and somewhere else. And then Robin, Suzanne, Bugsy and Sharon, thank you, and for all of the rest of you, thank you for your answers. Petrichor, that's the thing. And I think, Carol, you're in Seattle. So thank you very much indeed for your answers. We do, as I say, love to hear from you, and I learn just about probably more from you than you do from me ever. Right, let's continue after that magnificent... Andrew, what have you spotted? Oh, look at that. Andrew's very artistic this morning. He's feeling a great sense of artistic filmmaking, clearly. And what he's filming there, of course, is the dew that's been caught by a grass stalk. A beautiful grass stalk of a species, probably an Eragrostis or Spirobolus species, for those of you who care deeply about grasses. But isn't that beautiful? Just catching the dawn light there. Well done, Andrew.
Thank you, sir.
That's very artistic of you. Were you, you're feeling inspired today, are you?
It was just there.
Yes, very nice. For those of you who don't know, Andrew managed to walk into a pole the other day at 5:15 in the morning. He did himself quite a lot of damage, which we treated with the chewed up ziziphus leaves, which he wore for the whole day. Andrew, the head is, well, I mean, he's still sporting quite a nasty graze, but the slightly alarming bump that was raised after he banged his head has gone down, and he doesn't seem to be showing any ill effects, other than he's now become so artistic, of course, since the head bashing. We've got some impala in front of us. Quick look at them. Impalas in the dawn. It's very beautiful again. Our most common antelope, but also one of our most graceful. Now what you need to start looking for here, especially in the females, and they're the ones without the horns, of course, is a swelling belly. All the females are pregnant now, or most of them will be, and they will start to show signs that they're carrying little lambs in their bellies, hopefully to be deposited here in late November with the onset of the rain. Oof, that's a lovely picture. Oof, Andrew, you really are on fire today, eh? There's a big ram coming out. those young chaps there, that chap and the closest one to us with the small horns is almost a year old. They're obviously very easy to age because we know when they're born. They're all born in sort of late November. There are a few that are born around March time, but that's very unusual. And these guys were born almost a year ago, so they're just coming up for their first birthdays, and they've done pretty well, because although these impala flood the market within 2 weeks in November, about 50% of them will not make it through their first year. And I've spoken a lot about the rain, and we've had a number of bets between us all as to when the rains are going to come. And Mark in Lebanon, Missouri, a very nice question about when the rain is going to come. Well, Mark, we don't know. The answer is, Brent and I say late November. I said the 20th. Two young rams having a little bit of a box. We say that late November. Andrew, you said September.
I said October 6th.
October 6th, says Andrew. The cameramen are generally in agreement that October is going to be the month, and one or two extremely optimistic people, some might say delusional, have said September. But I don't think that September is going to happen. I may be entirely wrong, and that would be quite nice to be wrong, because we do need some rain. Cool morning weather does make animals much more sort of frisky than they would be otherwise. Play behavior is so important. Just like it is with human beings, play behavior amongst young mammals is so important because it helps with coordination, and it helps with various kinds of neurological development, so it's really important that animals do play. Andrew's just showing you there the stripes on the back of an impala's bottom, and their function, of course, nobody really understands. And you go to some places where your guide will tell you that that is the McDonald's sign of the bush. Now, if a guide ever does say that to you, you should make him stop the car immediately, get out and walk back to the lodge, because he shouldn't be doing guiding as a job. What it is either some kind of following mechanism, or it might have something to do with heat balance. And of course heat balance is amazingly important out here. And we understand as human beings how important it is, because well, first of all, what we do is we manipulate our environments so that we're always comfortable. But we as human beings are actually remarkably good at heat balance, at maintaining the correct heat. Because of our upright postures, we're not exposed to the threats of overheating in the same way that some of these antelope are. And you'll find possibly that those dark bits on the back there of the impala, you can just see them in that impala behind, they may help to radiate heat when things are particularly hot. And certainly in springbok, which are gazelles, the only gazelle we find in southern Africa, you find them in very hot situations in the Kalahari Desert, and they've got all sorts of funny different colors, especially dark brown down the flanks, and that helps them. The dark brown, of course, would attract heat, or would certainly exchange heat very effectively, and so it's away from this direct sunlight, but it helps to radiate the heat away from the animal, we think. And Andrew's just focusing in there on a gland, the fetlock gland. That joint there is called a fetlock, and that dark gland there, or there's a gland under that little dark bit of fur, and what it does is it secretes a pheromone that when the impala are running, they kick their back legs out, and it leaves a scent trail for them to follow if they happen to be fleeing from predators, so they can find each other. using that fetlock gland. And you can see how puffed up their fur is. And that's from, it's quite chilly. Well, it's not chilly, it was a bit chilly to start with. And they puff their fur up like that in the same way that a bird puffs its feathers up to trap the air underneath. And that just helps them to maintain some warmth. It's very clear. I tell you, I don't think I've had a pleasant impala sighting like this for a long time. Very nice to see. Right, Andrew, shall we press on? See what else we can see. We're still on that central road, heading toward Twin Dust Bowl, and we'll see what we find when we get there. Keep your questions coming. Now there's a very nice query from Chris in Oregon about why animals see us as the apex predator. Is it innate or is it something that they learn? It is entirely innate at this stage. I mean, there certainly can be some learned behaviors, without getting into the nature-nurture debate, which isn't really so much a debate anymore, over the course of evolutionary time, because of their experience of human beings, animals have learned, so their environment has favored those that are naturally afraid of human beings. Remember that, so essentially now it is innate. But remember that when we were in our distant evolutionary past, I can smell something dead here. You see the batelier there? There's also a game drive there. You know what? I think there's a kill there, chaps. The ranger there is calling me in. We're going to go and have a look there. There is a guide there. There's some buffalo, at least there's some batelier, and the ranger's calling me there. I will get back to your question, Chris. Remember, the radios are not working. Aê! E foguele, me come Shinzele. Ui, Schatzagesa Shinzele. Shifile. Shanugam Gopfu. There is a dead honey badger. We're just going to pull in here. Gee whiskers. Can you get that, Andrew?
Negative, unless you...
Okay, I'm just going to go a little bit forward. Get that?
That'll be good.
So, here be a dead honey badger. Hello, everybody. I'm not talking to myself. I'm talking to the camera. Mandiv. So, this is quite sad to see, and we have seen honey badger around here before, but we don't know what killed it. But the smell coming off it, I can only imagine to be quite similar to that in the bowels of hell. It does really stink. And I think that's what those batelier were looking at, and I'm sure they'll probably come back. It looks to me like they've been pecking at his fur. This is very sad to see. And Texon, who's the ranger who found it, was just saying he didn't know what on earth would have killed it, because these are not easy to kill. Very difficult to kill because they are vicious and they have a very loose skin. In fact, I'm actually going to try and show that to you. Andrew, I'm going to jump out. You'll tell me if no one can hear what I'm saying, will you?
Yeah.
at a stick. I don't wish to touch it with my hands. Now it has been dead for a while. It's starting to rot. I mean, they also will smell because of, they've got a very strong anal gland, obviously in the anus, that makes them smell pretty bad. And that's where they're part of a family called the Mustelidae, and that's a family of smelly animals, basically. What I really want to look at here is the size of the claws. Did you see them, Andrew?
Briefly, but another view would be nice.
There.
Oh, yes.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Those claws are quite something. And they're used to scrape away... Ooh, the smell is eye-watering. They are used to scrape away the hard soil on a termite mound, or get into bees' nests which are in trees, so they can scrape away that. But whatever has killed this honey badger must have been a formidable animal. And I suspect it was probably another honey badger, because if it was a lion or a hyena, they probably would have eaten it. This honey badger has been dead for some time. It's pretty rank. Nothing will go to waste. It will eventually be eaten, certainly by those Batalia will have a go at it. But I'm very glad that we don't have to eat food that smells like this. Andrew? Yes. Very foul. So sad to see, but I think there's a pretty healthy population of honey badger around here. We'll try and get a little bit closer so you can maybe see the face. Sorry, Andrew, watch out. That's Ziziphus mucronata there, your healing plant. Is that right? I will try and just reposition so we can get a better look at the face. Like I say, I don't know what killed it. A couple of postulations from the Twitterverse. Can you get that, Andrew?
Yeah.
Maybe a snake bite? I don't think so. They're pretty immune to snakes. I can see where it was digging. Oh, I've just parked myself on a Ziziphus tree. Postulation that it could have been a snake bite, I don't think so. They're pretty immune to snake bites. You know, there's that wonderful footage that a lot of you have seen and mentioned, in fact, where a honey badger was bitten by, I think it was a snouted cobra or Cape cobra, and it went to sleep for a couple of hours and then woke up and was fine. It was digging here, I think, just around here. You can't see that, can you?
Can't see it.
Okay, there was a hole here. I think it was digging around there before whatever it was got this thing. Look, it's not impossible that it was a snake. Maybe a mamba or something like that got it. I can't see any obvious marks, except where the birds have taken the eyes and the nose and the soft parts. Otherwise, I can't see any marks. So maybe it was something like a mamba. I'm going to try and turn it over. Ah, well now that's interesting. There is a puncture mark there. Can you see that?
Yes.
I actually think that's from the birds, though, that have got under the skin. It's a male, but it is. Ooh. It's. Ooh. The smell is something else. Yeah, very difficult to say. If it had been another honey badger, it would probably have been bitten somewhere on the back of the neck, and we wouldn't necessarily see the puncture marks. Maybe a snake, maybe a mamba. You know, I think that's enough of that. The adder is quite frightening. Andrew, now I'm going to have to climb into the car and not attack myself with a Ziziphus. There we go. Sense of smelling. Right, I'm leaving here. Any more questions you have, you're welcome to ask. They just won't be around here. Extremely exciting. Okay, we're going to head across to Scott, who's managed to find my favorite little friend on Juma, and I'll see you in just a little while.
Welcome back, everyone, and we got lucky and have managed to track down young Sindile. Really interesting stuff with that honey badger, and wouldn't it be wonderful to know exactly what did happen? I know James did come up with a few plausible theories as to what may have killed it, but I guess we'll never be certain of the answer to that. Interestingly enough, when we came into the area looking for Sindile this morning, we found drag marks, which essentially is a term that is a tracking term that is used for when an animal has made a kill and dragged the carcass. And I'm not sure what it was that he killed, but for a drag mark to have been left, it must have been something of a reasonable size, and I'm guessing it was him that was responsible for it. We found him not far from the drag mark, but no sign of any kill, so possibly a hyena have stolen it, or he finished off the kill. But sadly, I haven't been able to have a good look at his belly to see how full he is. But still, good confirmation for all of us that even though his mother's been away now for, I think it's 6 days, that he hasn't seen her, as far as we're aware. And even though he shouldn't be fending for himself, at least we know he is capable of doing so. For now he's, as you can see, very sleepy, but there is a colony of dwarf mongooses not far from us that are slowly waking up. And maybe they will provide him with his next meal. Still a lot of bird song this morning. Crested barbet calling. Bryan and I were driving here, I mentioned some, oh, big yawn, get some screenshots. No, not the biggest yawn, but maybe another one will be coming shortly. As I was saying though, when Bryan and myself were on our way here, we were saying that we were hoping to find tracks of his mother, a leopard called Shadow, coming back into this area. As I said earlier, she's been away for about 6 days now. And she's been busy mating with Tingana for 3 of those days and the Anderson male for another 1. And we're not sure what she's been up to for the last 2 days. But no sign of her coming back into this area. It was just his tracks with the drag mark, and I really wish we could work out what he managed to kill, possibly a small steenbuck. It certainly was something larger than a mongoose or a francolin, which are the only 2 kills we are aware that he's made to date. I must stress he would have made lots more than that, it's just we haven't seen any. But for a drag mark to be left on the road, when the leopard's walking, the prey needs to be dangling out of his mouth, and therefore of a considerable size. Unless, of course, he was just dragging a stick between his legs, which is not likely but possible, or some other random object that he picked up to play with. Brent was in the area helping to track him down, and at one point while we were on foot tracking before we found him, Brent did say he smelt stomach content, but couldn't work out exactly where it was coming from. And like I said earlier, sadly in the position he's lying in now, it's impossible to tell whether he has fed on anything. And who knows, maybe he spends a lot of time cleaning himself after the kill, and that's why we can't see any traces of blood on him, just as he's doing now. Regarding lions and lion tracks, I haven't heard any further updates, and it sounds like all of the lion are either on Sibambili or west thereof. I don't think there are any lion tracks on Arethusa, so that's an update on the lion for now. Brent and I sat up late last night listening to a performance from the Birmingham coalition of male lions. It was really wonderful. We could hear 4 of them calling, and it seemed like they were trying to reunite with the one individual that has been missing from their coalition for about 2 or 3 days now, I'm told. But sadly they were too far to the east, and I'm guessing are still east of us. I think I've just heard an update on the one radio channel saying that the Birmingham coalition have been located to the east of us on Cheetah Plains. So, doesn't look like we're going to have any luck with lion today, but thankfully there's a lot of other animals out here, and young Sindile here has been really good quality for us at the moment, and it's been quite easy to find him. He's been staying put in a very small area, I would say about a quarter square mile of a square mile or half a square mile. There's a small little area he's been hanging around in. Oh, is he going to chase that tail of his? I saw some highlights from Brent's sighting of him yesterday morning, as he was chasing his tail whilst up in a fallen down tree. It's not something we want him to make a habit of doing. It's not the most ideal thing to have one of your stars of the show chasing their own tail. Really, I'm looking forward to when he does reposition, because I'd love to take a closer look at that belly of his to see whether he did actually manage to feed on something, or if it wasn't in fact another leopard that made a kill in this area and dragged it off. I find it highly unlikely to find him so close to where the drag marks were. Leads me to feel strongly that it was him that made the kill. And also we did take a very close look at those specific tracks crossing the road, and they did look to be much like his. Now, one of our viewers, Charlie, has mentioned that she did see a slight smudge of red above one of his eyes, and it's his right eye. And Charlie, you are also right, and it's very difficult to see. Oh, look at how beautiful this is. This is the moment you were hoping for. Now, just because he does reposition, it may not be clear to us that he has made a kill. But let's see what happens here. What has he heard or seen? He seems fairly tuned into something in front of him, but I can't see or hear anything, and his body language is not quite serious enough for him to be... Oh, there we go. To be completely convinced there is something worth chasing up ahead, but we'll keep an eye on that. Earlier on, I did mention that he shouldn't be fending for himself just yet. Usually a leopardess will only start worrying about her next generation when the current litter is about 18 months to 2 years of age. Whereas now he's still just on a year of age, so he should still be relying on his mother for quite some time. And on that topic, we've got some interesting info through, and a question, I guess, from Patty in Washington State. And she said that Shavinzi, one of Karula's offsprings, another leopard, was actually self-sufficient from 8 months of age. Now, I find that hard to believe. I'm not saying I don't believe you, Patty, but that is very, very young, and I think it's fair to say, in terms of my knowledge, it's against the norm, and I've never heard of a leopard that young being self-sufficient or independent. But what Patsy did also mention is that female leopards often become independent before young males. Now, the reason why I think that is the case is simply because a young male leopard is often bigger than his mother, and therefore he doesn't necessarily have to listen to her commands. And even though she may try her best to chase off a young male, he will still trail her and follow her and keep cashing in on her kills, even whilst she may be raising another litter. And I have seen that happen before. Young male leopards, 2 years of age, following the next generation, the next litter of only a few months of age, and just tagging along, waiting for mum to come back with the good news of their next meal. So I think that is the main reason why a young female or young female leopards will naturally have to become independent slightly sooner than a young male, because they would be less inclined to directly disobey their mother. And it's a size and a power issue here. Like I said, young male leopards, just like this one, even at a year of age, is bigger than his mother. And as we chat about the next generation, there is a chance that Shadow will be giving birth in 3 months' time, because she has been mating at least for 4 days. 3 of those days, like I said earlier, was with Tingana, and 1 of those days was with the Anderson male. And Monica is asking, how long is the usual estrus cycle and how long will they mate for? It's usually 3 to 5 days, Monica. So I'm surprised by the fact that Shadow has not come back into this area, because the mating should be over with. However, an update from the other day was that Shadow and the Anderson male, whilst they were mating, were seen in a sighting with another leopardess and her very small cub. It's only a few months old, and that female leopard's called Salaeshwe, and it's a very small cub, 2 or 3 months old, like I said. And Shadow was chasing around Salaeshwe. Females will compete, but sometimes very, very violently amongst one another for territory. So I'm wondering if the fact that she had this kind of territorial dispute with Salaeshwe may have caused her to stay in that area and try and reaffirm any territorial misunderstandings between those 2 leopards. Who knows? Maybe another theory where Shadow could be is that because she was very hungry the last time we saw her, which was, I think 2 days ago, she was very hungry and she may have made a kill and be restocking up on some much needed nutrients. So those are my guesses, but usually, Monica, 3 to 5 days would be a typical period for leopards to mate. And the fact that she's been away longer for that is difficult to explain. But that is the beauty of being out here. We learn new things about these animals every day, and what we also learn and are constantly reminded of is that even though leopards or lions or hyenas may have certain habits or traits, each individual within that species will be different. And you can take us humans as a perfect example. You get different sizes and shaped humans, and also humans that have got very different personalities. And if you look even closer than that, even us as individuals will have different moods, and our personality may change from day to day. And that's what keeps us guessing out here and keeps things exciting. So I definitely don't think there's anything to worry about, though, even though she is not here. And Virginia in Kentucky has asked whether there's any chance that she could possibly forget about him. And anything is possible out here, Virginia, but I find it highly, highly unlikely that she would forget about him. So I don't think that's going to be the case. And a possible theory that Renner has just suggested is she not too scared to come back here in the knowledge or with the chance of the Anderson male following her here, and the Anderson male, unlike Tingana, who's in all likelihood this leopard's father, the Anderson male could and probably would kill young Sindile if he did come across him. The chance of a male leopard following a female leopard this far out of his territory is highly unlikely, and it's often the females that will follow the males when they are mating. And we witnessed that when Tingana was in the move. He was making all the decisions as to when and where they moved, and Shadow followed suit. On his movements, he took her basically on the eastern side of his territory into Juma, and he was carrying on business as normal, marking his territory, letting Mvula know that he's still around. Mvula's the other male leopard to the east of here. And Shadow followed all the way deep into uncharted territory for her, so that she could mate with him. Similar behavior was seen with Mvula and Kwatile, the female leopard that we've only seen a few times, I think 2 or possibly 3 times, one of which was when she followed Mvula deep into Karula's territory. So I don't think that's going to be a problem, Rena. Well, thanks very much, Ellen, for sending through some more info. I know Patty said that a young leopardess called Shavinzi was self-sufficient from 8 months of age, but Ellen's also got some more information on that topic, and it was closer to a year of age, I'm told, that she was seen spending less and less time with Karula and Shivambalana, her brother, and she was actually never seen self-sufficient for, or as an adult rather, so she may not have necessarily made it, and I'm guessing she didn't make it if nobody knows anything about her anymore. Of course, there's a chance she may have disappeared into an area into the Kruger National Park or the Manyeleti, where they're not followed as closely by game vehicles. At least even if they are, we may not have got those updates, but usually a female leopard will stay very close to her mother's territory even when they do become independent. So maybe that's an example of a young leopardess who didn't get so lucky. And there just doesn't seem to be enough concise information on this topic to draw any useful conclusions, but thank you very much for all those updates. Look at that pretty tail. Well, Renee, I'm very happy to finally know where you're from. Santiago. And Renee is one of our long-time viewers who often sends questions through, but we never knew where you were from. So please make sure you try and include your home city or country at least, when you are sending through your questions or tweets. Remay's asked an interesting question, and that is whether or not this leopard will call hoping to find his mother. It's usually the other way around. It's usually the youngsters wait in an area and their mother will come back and contact call for them, and then they will respond. But I guess if he does get desperate, he could start letting off his own contact calls. It wouldn't be clever though. He doesn't know what other leopards or lions or anything is in the area, and therefore I don't think he'd be inclined to want to give away his position by letting off those contact calls, but it is something that may happen. What also may happen is any minute now, Shadow could pop up onto the scene, and that's what I'm hoping for. That would be a wonderful, wonderful surprise. And as we say this, he's pricked up his ears. What has he heard? Imagine if it is her contact calls. It could be potential prey, but the fact that we were speaking earlier about her, just the chance of her arriving. Yes, it's happening. It could be happening. Can you believe it? That was a soft contact call. Has he heard his mother? Or has Remain San Diego just made an incredible call? Well, Remain, if you are right, I owe you one. But I think he could be responding to her. The fact that we heard his ears prick up initially, and him not just call, means to think that he has possibly heard her, or he's imagining things. Maybe it's wishful hearing. Either way, that was uncanny, the timing. Hey, Bryan? Okay, we're going to need to reposition quickly. If they do reunite, I want to be certain to get you in on that action. Well, judging by his behavior now, I'm not sure what to say, because he doesn't seem hugely excited. He is heading off in the direction where he looked up initially and vocalized back in, and maybe he just hasn't really missed his mother if she is returning. He's been quite happy looking after himself. Anyway, watch this space and cancel any appointments that you may have had, because this could be a wonderful, wonderful sighting. Not that it isn't already, but it could get a whole lot better. And get ready to take some screenshots, because you're about to get some great views of him. Sorry, Bryan. All good? Too much angle, Bryan.
No, it's okay.
Look at this beautiful view. Awesome. Blue sky in the background. I've got the wrong lens on my camera, but I'm going to take a few photos anyway, so don't mind me. Perfect golden morning sunlight in his face. And no more contact calls, so maybe he was imagining things. Maybe it was him hoping that he heard his mother call earlier. Well, I'm sure a lot of you got some great screenshots there. I didn't get anything. He came back onto the termite mound. Look at this. Absolutely beautiful. And it really does make such a big difference to have this beautiful low angle. Well, Sindile is the king of this castle for the time being, and Reme, wasn't that absolutely incredible? As you suggested that, or asked whether there'd be any chance of him calling out to his mother, he pricked up his ears, and I'm guessing he was hoping it was her call that he heard, and responded once just to see if he was in luck. But I think because he didn't get any responses, he has now kept quiet. So I'm putting it down to an error made on his behalf, that he just wasn't sure what that noise was that he heard, and that is why he responded to it. Having said that, though, shadow could still appear at any moment, and he is still looking longingly in that same direction. What we must remember is that his hearing is going to be a lot better than ours, so he could possibly hear things a lot further off than we can. It's always great hearing a new name come through. And morning, Faku. It's good to have you on safari with us. And don't be alarmed by the fact that we're in an open vehicle so close to this potentially dangerous animal. What I must explain is that a lot of the animals in Africa have very slowly and gently been habituated by humans, so they are completely wild and they're not tame, but they are comfortable and tolerate us as humans. They don't see us as a food source, and that's been the case for many, many thousands of years. We are the apex predator on the planet, and typically when you do come across wild animals, they will run away from you. So it actually requires a lot of reassuring of wild animals that we are no threat to them, and by never feeding them or harming them, they allow us into their lives and into this ecosystem with very, very little danger. Especially in the vehicles. On foot it's a different scenario, and you do need to be a lot more careful when on a walking safari or when off tracking. But it still is a rush when these animals get close to the vehicles, and I know for a lot of first-timers and guests out here on safari, they can have some incredible adrenaline rushes as these wild animals do walk past the open vehicles. It's a wonderful, wonderful thrill. But thankfully, it's not dangerous, and as long as we respect the animals, they tend to respect us too. Well, this is the castle that Sindile has now claimed for himself. I really thought we were going to see him reunite with his mother there when he let off that contact call. But not looking promising anymore. The last time we got to see them reunite, we were actually with his mother, and she came back into the area where she left him, but he had moved off quite a way, and her soft contact calls weren't heard by him, and she actually started letting off loud, rasping calls, which travel further, and eventually, after probably about 45 minutes to an hour of tireless calling, he eventually popped into the scene. And thanks, Monica, for reminding me about that sighting that I've just discussed. Wasn't it absolutely awesome? That sighting all started thanks to a big bull giraffe, some of you will remember, who alerted us to the presence of the leopard walking nearby. There's a very gentle breeze blowing, and it's a beautiful temperature now. It was quite crisp and cold earlier on, but it is turning out to be a beautiful, beautiful day with a very gentle breeze. I'm wondering if I can't reposition the vehicle. It looks quite comfortable here, to a spot where we'll get you less obstructions in the way of his face. This is such a pretty scene that we may as well try and make the most of it. Not sure if it is possible, but worth a try. Don't worry, we're not going to try and chase him off his perch there. We just want to try and get a different spot here, which could be a bit better. Not much, and it's putting Bryan at such a funny angle there, but let's try this for a while. You okay there, Bryan?
Yeah.
Bryan's got his toes curled up, hooked in to make sure he doesn't scuba exit off the back of this vehicle. Still obstructed, but slightly better, and at least a different view for you to enjoy for now. And as I said, it's warmed up a little bit from 13 degrees Celsius, 55 degrees Fahrenheit when we started, to 17 degrees Celsius, which is about 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, we are quite close to him. I'd probably say from where I'm sitting to where he's lying now is about 5 meters. So not far at all. And Deborah in Louisiana asks, are there any protocols in terms of how close you should and can get to the animals? It depends on the area of operation. I know some camps have got very vigilant rules with how close you can get to the various animals, but I'm a believer of you should treat each individual sighting and animal accordingly. To make set and very defined rules, and this is just my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean you are doing the animals any favors. So it does depend on where you work, but guides will try and be as careful and respectful as possible to the animals, otherwise they will just run off and get aggravated, and understandably no guides want their guests to experience that. So it kind of self-polices itself a lot of the time. And in the Sabi Sands, at most of these lodges, the guides are left to their own discretion with how close to get to various animals. Sindile, what did you hear earlier? What was it that caught your attention? Imagine if he's just playing hard to get and Shadow's not far off calling away and he's just enjoying his time alone. I doubt that's the case, but you never know out here. Really frustrated from the fact that we did have a drag mark of a kill that I'm 99% certain he would have made last night. And it looked like something quite considerable in size. It would have been great to see him with his own decent sized kill. So there are always these little frustrations of unknown and mysteries that we will never be able to solve. Interesting questions just come through from Renna, and it's got me thinking. And Renna's asked, would Sindile still respond to a call that's not from his mother? So another leopard trying to call. And if he heard the call clearly, no, he wouldn't. They can tell which leopard is speaking. So the leopards and the lions, when they vocalize, they will know exactly who's saying what. However, if we take this example of what's happened this morning, there could be a scenario where a young leopard like this is left in an area and another female leopard comes back looking for her cubs, and he can very faintly hear her call, and he may therefore respond to it because he can only very faintly hear the contact call and not make out exactly who it is that's speaking to him. So I guess that could happen, but that would be a bit of a bizarre scenario. And typically, no, he would only respond to and communicate with his mother. I guess to us, all the leopards sound the same. And the leopards probably say the same thing amongst themselves, that us humans all sound the same to them. He's run. What is going on? Where is he running off to? Oh, he seems very excited. He's running quite a long distance. Hold on, everyone. Put your tea and coffee down or whatever you're holding on to. This might get a little bit bumpy. I don't want to lose him. And I also do want to see what he's rushing off to. All of a sudden, he just started running. And maybe it is his mother that he heard calling earlier. Let's go and see. I do have a visual of him. He's just up ahead. What I'm going to try and do is take the path of least resistance to get to him. But bear in mind, while we are off-roading, we are causing minimal damage to the trees that we drive over. And the ones we do drive over, we know can just pop up. He's still running ahead of us. What is it? I think it could be his mom. I think we're in luck. He's come quite a distance now. And like I say, maybe is finally his mother that he will reunite with. Wouldn't that be an incredible thing to share with all of you? I can hear a squirrel alarm calling now, probably at Sindile. And look, he's still moving, listening very intently. Let's see if he doesn't let off another contact call. Just like that, with no warning, he got up and ran off the termite mound. And that's why it's so important to invest time with these animals, even when they appear sleepy with nothing happening. You can never be quite sure what is going to happen next, and that's a perfect example of that. He slowed down his pace a little bit. Initially he was literally bounding off in this direction. He stopped to sniff quite intently there. I wonder what it is that he smelt. Still no contact calls from him, which is interesting. So it feels like there's something worth investigating here, but the fact that he hasn't let off a contact call is strange, because once they hear one another, they'll continue to contact until they see one another, and then they no longer need to communicate via their vocalizations. They can approaching Philemon's cut line, one of the roads here on Juma. And I'm just going to loop ahead of him. I'm guessing he will continue in this general direction he has been moving in, and we should get some nice views of him in the open here. Just like him, I'm listening very intently, hoping to hear a call from his mother. But other than the birds, all seems quiet for now. We've got a funny comment and question through from Wendy, and she would like to know, well, she initially actually said that it was really exciting stuff and that a lot of the viewers were probably more excited than he was to find his mother. And you're probably right, Wendy. And Wendy also asked if and when he lets out these contact calls, could it potentially alert other predators to him? And yes, it certainly could. If there was a lion or any hyenas nearby, that would certainly have an impact on what they do. But what we must remember is that even though there is a small chance that predators could come onto the scene, this young leopard would have come across lion and hyena many, many times and can escape them by running up big trees that they cannot get up into. So we shouldn't be too worried about him. He's young, but he's a big boy now. And if he was only a few months old, that would be a very different scenario, because at that age they are still very vulnerable and haven't learnt as many lessons as he would have by his age now. Okay, well, he didn't continue out into the open clearing as I thought he may. Another thing that Wendy asked was whether I think he has any emotion and whether he misses his mother. I guess to a degree, but I think he probably misses the fact that she hasn't called him to a meal more than he actually misses her. And these cats do spend lots of time away from their mothers, and they are solitary eventually, so I think he's just fine entertaining himself. And now that he has been moving around for a while, considering he has been away for his mother for so long, I'm almost certain he got a decent meal. I'm guessing whatever he killed last night of a substantial size was stolen by a hyena, but he's certainly not looking in bad shape, and his belly looks more full-bellied than his mother's did when I saw her a couple of days ago. Let's see what he goes and does on those logs. I'm just going to reposition because he may jump up onto that network of fallen down branches. I've been throwing around a few possible theories as to what's going on, and Gilly Manette has put another possible theory through, and that is that could Shadow have potentially been distracted midway between her contact calls and is maybe trying to hunt something now? I guess that is a very good theory that you've put forward to us. And it could be the case. It certainly could. Who knows? Maybe she let off a few contact calls and then an impala appeared in front of her and she's now trying to catch it. Wouldn't that be great if... Hello, boy. How are you doing? Where's your mum? Wouldn't that be great though if all of a sudden Shadow charged out of the bushes, jumped on an impala, and then they reunited there and then. So I'm very happy you put that theory through, and I hope you are right. They are just such incredibly beautiful animals, these leopard, and a morning like this with perfect sunlight and all the different things he's been doing is certainly filling up my filing cabinets with some very, very happy memories. Okay, well, we're probably going to go now. I think we've spent enough time with him, so we are... No, I'm only joking. We're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to reposition and continue following him. We are hugely lucky, both us as the presenters and guides and you as the viewers, with the way that we can guide due to the Safari Live experience, because it's an ongoing, never-ending safari. We aren't forced to race between sightings like a lot of the guides will have to do with their guests who may only be here for 3 days, and during a 3-day stay, understandably, people want to see all the different animals, whereas we are different in that we've got infinite amounts of safaris ahead of us, and therefore we can make the most of any specific sightings that may be worth hanging around for. This is a perfect example. I never in my guiding career ever spent 3 hours or 2 hours with any one animal, whereas since I've been here, we've been really privileged in being able to sit and spend considerable periods of time with the animals, thus increasing your chances of seeing great things. I'm not sure what he's trying to achieve here, stalking through this fallen down combretum tree. But like I said earlier, he does a good job at keeping himself entertained. Another thing that we have to remember is that there's also 2 vehicles, whereas other guides out here, their guests don't have the benefits of being able to chop and change between 2 different guides. They are stuck with only one. Therefore, if, for example, Sindile wasn't performing as he is this morning, you would probably be with James, and as soon as Sindile started to do something, you'd come back. So we all get spoiled here. I think you guys are on the best seat though, because like I just mentioned, you get to see action from 2 different vehicles. And a lot of the time when you jump across onto James or Brent or Jamie's vehicle, I wish I could come along too. Well, Stephanie, Monica, Anna Marie, and Sophie may have just tuned in more recently, and sorry, not Sophie, Christy may have tuned in more recently and are wondering what I think about his hunger levels. And to me, he certainly does look fairly hungry, but his belly is by no means completely empty, and we did find some drag marks. It looked like he made a kill of a considerable size, maybe a steenbuck or a duiker, something fairly large that when he walked across a road with it in his mouth, it was dangling and touching the road. So not a little mongoose or a francolin which would be suspended in the air, but something a bit bigger than that. And one of the viewers actually spotted a little bit of blood above his right eye, and if we get another close view of him, take a closer look at that, more signs of him having fed on something at least to keep him going. certainly don't think his hunger levels are anything for us to worry about. Well, last I saw, he disappeared behind a termite mound, which is, he's playing with us. He's stalking around the termite mound. And he's just popped out into a very pretty view here. Beautiful. Well, one thing's for certain, he is certainly listening very intently. You can see how he's now cocked his head. He's pointing it now in a westerly direction. And now we're going to see another contact call. Well, now that we are a bit closer, I don't know if that blood is still above his right eye. I can't see it on my little monitor. But trying to look through my binoculars. I can't clearly see it, but what we can see is this beautiful rosetted cat. I'm interested to hopefully be able to follow his movements until he becomes a big, mature male, because it'll be great to see what he turns into many years from now. And all likely, probably 4 years from now will be when he can start throwing his weight around. But before then, he's going to be flying below the radar, trying to avoid any dominant male leopards and just keep himself well fed and out of harm's way. And only from, like I say, about 5 years of age will they start to compete for their own territory and start interacting with other dominant males. What may happen is his little pink nose that we can see could become black in color, so that is one change that we could expect. There's no guarantee that it will go that way, but a lot of leopards' noses will become darker as they get older. And Insomniac Josh and Pretty Nightmare, two interesting names of people regarding the night, have both asked when could we expect to see him move off on his own. And I personally think he's going to be around for about another year in this area. Even though his mother may have another generation of cubs, he's just going to tag along like one happy family. Those are my thoughts. So I think we will have at least another year or so of viewing. So we will get to see him get a lot bigger, that's for certain, in this next year. And anywhere after that, we could expect to see less and less of him. Kind of similar to Quarantine and Konyuma. They were around until about 2.5 years of age, I think, before they started disappearing. And even still, they come back in every now and then, and we get a few glimpses of them. Quarantine was just on our southern boundary a few days ago. Yesterday he was last seen. And Brent seems to think he may have tracked down and located Konyuma on foot. But sadly it was in an area where we could not get a vehicle into. Shame, poor old Brent. That's happened to him a couple of times now, where he's done the hard work of managing to track down the animal, only to find it in an area where he cannot go and show all of you. So let's hope that run of bad luck changes. And Donna is now asking whether Sindile is anywhere near where Quarantine male leopard was last seen yesterday morning with his kudu kill. And sadly that wasn't seen by you, the viewers, so I must just clarify that. James was out there on tracking team, and he drove past, did see a brief glimpse of him, and then by the time I got there, there was no further sign of him. But Donna, we are nowhere near that kill. It's probably about 2.5 miles away from us. But a similar looking area. So if you were making that call on the terrain and scenery around here, I do agree with you. It's a very similar looking area. One more question before we send you across to James for an update. I'm really curious as to what he's been up to. I don't have a clue. I think he may have been tracking a leopard on Arathusa, was the last I heard. But a couple of you would like to know if Shadow would remember where she left him so many days ago. And that's Angie and Jennifer. And I'm very confident that, yes, she would remember where she left him. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. And I think the major reason why she may not have already come back is that she's got other business to attend to. I certainly don't think she's forgotten. This is her home, and this is her cub. And for her to forget those two things, I don't think is a reality. So I don't think we have to worry about that. Anyway, what fun it's been. Hopefully he will get up and run off this termite mound just like he did off the last one after he's had a bit of a siesta, and we'll be sure to call you back when he does. But for now, I'm sure you're all looking forward to an update from James. Enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jiga. You find us very frustrated here on Arathusa. We found some male leopard tracks heading into this block from the other side there, but Andrew and I cannot find them coming out of the block, which is a good thing, except that I think it looked like the male was marking territory, which means that he was walking in a dead straight line, not the sort of weaving that happens with hunting. And so I would expect him to have popped out of this block, but he hasn't. So maybe he is still in the block just behind us. Well, we're going to continue the search for the next little while and see what we come up with. I believe you've been having a marvelous time with Sindile, which is excellent. He is fast becoming my favorite friend that we find here on our Juma and Arathusa paradises. And I do wonder where his mother is. We did have tracks of a female leopard as well in this area, but I know that she was around here about 2 or 3 days ago, and the tracks didn't look very fresh. So I think she's further north of here right now. The male tracks that we had were big, very big, and perhaps, I don't know, I mean maybe some of you have got an update, but we don't have radio communications. Perhaps it is the Anderson male. They look a bit big to be Tingana. I might be wrong, but perhaps these are the Anderson male's tracks. The morning has it's remained quite cloudy actually. Quite interesting, and it doesn't look very cloudy, but the sun has not sort of come out and started to warm us up too much. Andrew is still dressed like he's about to rob a bank, because the temperature hasn't really sort of got off the ground yet. And I'm driving at this sort of frustratingly slow pace because I don't want to miss any tracks going across the road. I don't think he's this way. I'm going to turn around again. Maybe he's watching us from the block. I shudder to think how many leopards I have walked or driven past. Watched me go thinking, what a Charlie. Right. This is the nature of tracking a leopard. Not easy, unless... Actually, a really nice way to learn to track a leopard, of course, is to follow young Sindile. Because he has been, especially when his mum isn't around, because he's been around the same area, he leaves A, lots of tracks, and B, you know you're going to find him in a similar kind of place. So if you're practicing leopard tracking, he's a pretty good one to start on. And a male is often more difficult than a female because they do move such huge distances. And he'll scoot across a road like this almost without seeing it. And then if somebody's driven along here early morning perhaps and not been paying attention, they could easily have driven over his tracks. Let me go back here and have a look. He was following a game path when I lost his tracks in the block. Although I don't see him coming out there. Right. We're very close to Arathusa Lodge now. So we'll just have a look along here for a while and then maybe just pop across to the waterhole there and see what's going on. Andrew, do shout if you see a leopard.
Will do.
You will. Well, don't shout, just sort of whisper it gently. Plenty of civet tracks all over the place. Oh, the earpiece is out. I believe Nicky Alston was trying to speak with me. Looking for the leopard tracks. Anna Marie, Lily, Ellen, Lee and John. You'd like to know how Andrew's head is. Well, you know, it depends really on what you consider Andrew's normal state of mind to being. The pole has subsequently withered and died. fallen over and been eaten by termites. Andrew's head still sports a fairly impressive graze on the front of it. Now, and the effect on his mental state, we're not really sure. And if you perhaps weren't with us early this morning, Andrew showed a rather sort of unusual artistic streak with his filming this morning, and so perhaps there has been some sort of altering of the mind. Thank you for your concern. But I don't think there was anything too serious in the bashing. Hey, Andrew?
Ah, all's good.
All is good. I do wonder if this leopard isn't perhaps looking at us from a termite mound or a bush. We're quite near to the Arathusa airstrip, which is now sporting a tarmac strip. Amanda in Alabama, while we continue this fairly frustrating process of looking for leopard tracks coming across what is in fact a main thoroughfare, and so they could easily have been obliterated by some, well, not inconsiderate, but perhaps rushing vehicle this morning. Amanda in Alabama, deep south, you'd like to know about snakes, and it is a question that comes up often, and especially in the wake of seeing that honey badger and trying to postulate what had happened to him. Amanda, snakes do come out at this time of year, especially as it's starting to get a bit warmer, and what that honey badger will do, they will eat snakes, and they will also scrabble in the kinds of places where snakes like to not hibernate but estivate, where they like to rest up when it's cold, and that's in termite mounds. So it's quite possible that honey badger disturbed a whole lot of snakes while it was digging, or not a whole lot of snakes, but disturbed a snake while digging in the termite mound. And it was right at a hole that it seemed to have been excavating when it was killed. So I really don't know. It could have been a snake, it's not impossible, but yeah, I don't know. But there are snakes around, Amanda, and especially as it warms up, there are going to be more and more snakes. We're going to do another about turn here. I don't wish to drive too much closer to the airstrip. Continuing the honey badger discussion, interesting, Patty's observation that we saw some a few days ago in the middle of the day, two adults running next to each other, quite far from where we saw the dead one today. And Patty, you're saying you don't know that before how many times we've seen them on WildEarth in the last 8 years. I don't know either. I know that Andrew and I saw, you've seen twice.
Yeah.
And we saw a youngster and mother, and then Jamie saw some the other day, and then of course there were the two we saw a few days ago, and the hapless death this morning. Perhaps you can let us know, prior to this sort of period, what we shall term the modern era, prior to that, how often have honey badgers been seen? Like I say, we see their tracks fairly often. I think the population's fairly healthy, but they are principally nocturnal, so that's why we don't see them very often during the day. We're going to continue trying to find where this male leopard has come out of this block, and while we're doing that, we'll send you back across to Scott, who is with the magnificent Sindile, and I'll see you in just a little while.
Welcome back, everyone, and as you can see here, nothing has changed. He's just got more comfortable and is now fast asleep. That call you may have heard faintly was that of a red-crested korhaan calling nearby, and it's a sound we're going to hear a lot more, and hopefully we'll be able to... There it goes. Hopefully we'll even be able to show you them doing their display flight, which they use to attract mates. And that will be one call amongst many that we begin to hear in the summer months. There will be about 200 birds that arrive here from various parts of Africa, Europe and Asia, basically doubling the population of birds that we usually see during the winter months. So just over 400 birds we can see here at the most, and the best time to do that is summer. So if you are an ornithologist and wanting to come out here and enjoy not only the big cats but also the birds, your best option would be in summer. And I've just got the book out here to show you the red-crested korhaan, which is up on the top right over here. There's it calling again. And their display flight is awesome. The male will fly up into the air maybe 20 or 30 meters and then stalls its flight completely as if it's been shot and tumbles out of the sky, only to recover at the last moment. And that will be the individual that's probably calling now, the male. So maybe what we can do is try and get you a little bit closer to it. So let's go and try and find this bird, and we'll come back to Sindile. It's not too far away. And we can actually excite the birds by doing their call, and that way stimulate them to do their display flight. So we might do that, but we don't want to confuse the bird too much as to what's going on. So they're always on the ground. So that's where they need to be looking for it, and it sounded like it was coming from somewhere up ahead here. So I just want to get a little bit closer. Hopefully we'll be able to find it. I think it wasn't too long ago that Sindile was actually stalking one of these birds around a termite mound. Come on, little korhaan. Now that we're a little bit closer, if it calls again, we'll hopefully be able to pinpoint where it is. Come on, korhaan, give us one more call. It's a little bit cloudy. It's interesting weather. There's a few little white puffy clouds, which is going to keep us nice and cool today, at least for the time being. Fine layer of haze, you could say, up to the west, sorry, to the east. And it is a very hazy time of year because it's dry and dusty, which makes for some wonderful, wonderful sunsets and sunrises. You can see there that haze I'm talking about. Sindile still is up on the termite mound, so we don't have to rush back to him just yet, and I really would like to try and find this bird, and that way we can see it and hear it at the same time. I don't think we are deep enough into their breeding season to expect a display just yet, but as I said, their calls will continue to increase with intensity and number, and eventually we will be able to capture one of them doing that crazy display for you. But I don't think it's going to happen today, so we'll abandon that little plan and just notice now Sindile has repositioned himself on the same termite mound, and maybe we'll get lucky and he'll move off from here again. Sadly, no potential prey in the immediate area, at least it doesn't look like that to us. As Bryan zooms in onto Sindile's head and ears, it'll be a good opportunity for us to answer a question from Abby. And she's asked, what are those small little holes or flaps on the side of his ears? And you can very faintly see on that side there's a little bit of a kink. And if he was facing us, it looks almost like a hole in the side of his ear. Not quite there yet, he needs to face us, but that allows the leopards and lions and dogs to either prick up their ears as they are now, or flatten them against their head when they're stalking. So it could almost be described as a bit of a hinge, which allows the ear to be able to move, as we can see it moving now. So that'll explain that little hole or flap. No different to domestic cats and or dogs. A lot of dogs will also have that very same or similar flap. I'm not convinced on how much longer he can stay in this position for, so I think he may maneuver again shortly. I don't think it may be comfortable for a short period of time, but his back legs are facing to the left and his front are facing to the right, so he's kind of twisted his body into two different directions. And I know it's not the best view of him now, but like I say, I think he may change. And even if we were to drive around onto the other side of the termite mound, there's so much grass in front of his face, I don't think we would get much of a view from there. good news for James is that I'm fairly certain the route he comes back from Arethusa will bring him along this road so he can pop in and visit. And I believe he's been telling you that Sindile is fast becoming his new best friend out here. It has taken James a while to make friends, but at least finally he has decided that Sindile will be his best friend. And at least they will be able to see one another this morning on his way back. Just to clarify, I obviously was joking. It has not taken James a long time to find friends, quite the contrary. I'd love to know how much time a leopard spends on average cleaning itself every day. And obviously it will vary from day to day, but I'd almost be willing to take a guess in that probably at least about an hour a day they'll spend grooming. Maybe that's a bit much, but quite often before they get up and moving they will groom themselves, so that's also a good indicator for us that he may be planning on heading off again and he's just making himself look pretty before he does so. Well, for those of you who have been following the show for a few months, you will remember that he had both sets of his canines growing together out of both the top and bottom jaws. So it looked like he had these extra teeth, and Georgianne in Illinois is asking whether those canines are still there or whether they've fallen out. And they have fallen out. Bryan says it was quite some time ago, maybe a month or longer.
A couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of weeks to a month ago, Bryan noticed that he has in fact lost those initial sets of canines, and now he has got only his adult pairs remaining. And hopefully if he does let off a yawn again, which will be no surprise after this grooming, it's quite typical behavior, we might be able to get you a glimpse into his mouth so that you can double check for yourself. And if any of you do have an easily accessible photo of Sindile showing us those extra canines or the young pair growing with the adult pair, please be so kind as to post it on Twitter or any medium. I think Twitter might be a good one with the hashtag Safari Live, and then everyone can get to have a look at exactly what we're talking about. And Abby, you'll be able to see those little folds and creases, and not ideal because there's some grass in the way, but you can see how the ear is kind of hinging on those points as they flatten when he licks. Oh, he's kicked them forward. So I think that will give you a better idea of what we were talking about earlier. I think we can reposition ever so slightly, just a meter or two forward, and we'll get a better frontal view of him as he grooms. we've got a question through from Heather asking if I've ever felt a leopard, and if I have, how does it feel compared to the coat or fur of a lion? Sadly, Heather, I've never felt either a lion, a leopard, or a cheetah, so I cannot help you. But I think a leopard's coat does look slightly softer and ever so slightly furrier than a lion. But that could just be an optical illusion because of the very different colorations on the coats. And I guess a big difference will also be regarding the age of any given lion or leopard that one may be stroking. But and Bryan and I were just talking earlier of how wonderful it would be just for a minute or two to be able to play rough and tumble with Sindile. It's obviously a very selfish thought because they are wild animals and we must remember that, and I feel strongly that wild animals belong in the wild. That's where they're most happy.
I think it'd be quite soft.
So Bryan, you've heard, says he thinks it'll be soft. I couldn't agree more. I think his coat would be very soft. And if you could choose one animal to stroke, what would it be? Why don't you let us know your thoughts? Would it be a lion, a leopard, or a cheetah? What are your guys' thoughts as to if you could hypothetically get 1 minute to spend tumbling around and playing with any one animal out of those three cats, what would you guys choose? I know for a fact it would be a leopard. Although having said that, it would be quite nice to play with a lion too, just to feel how strong they are. The leopard's certainly more manageable, I think, in terms of size. And young Sindile over here would be my prime target. Again, this is all hypothetically speaking, so do not fear, I am not about to jump out of the vehicle and attempt anything of the sort. And I don't think Bryan is either.
Definitely not.
Well, I must say a very, very big thank you to Arcadia for sending through a picture of Sindile's double canine that we can now share with you. So thank you so much for your help. It really does make a big difference to us, having all you guys helping us out from all around the world. And it's important that I remind you that if ever you do come out on safari to Djuma or Arathusa or the surrounding camps, please make sure you let us know so that we can organize to visit and meet one another, and you get to see a little bit about how our operation runs on the ground here. That would be the least we could do to repay all of you for your help and support that you lend us. Well, got a funny comment through from Arcadia, who we've just been chatting to, and they mentioned that they are going to be selfish, or she's going to be selfish, and wants 2 minutes, not just one, with the leopard. So you're changing the rules here a little bit, but that's fine. And 1 minute with a male lion. And she specifically said she wanted it to be with this 1-year-old leopard cub. And I'm told Christy also has chosen leopard as her one animal that she would like to pet or play with. Interesting. Now we've got a few that are onto the male lions, and that's Heidi and Morning Glory, and their reason being is that they would like to be able to feel what that big shaggy mane feels like. Now Sindile is just rubbing it in now, saying, "Oh, wouldn't you like to be scratching my chin?" We would, Sindile, but we obviously don't expect you to allow us to do that. And merely the fact that he is so comfortable with us, so close to him, is more than we can ask. It's ridiculous how relaxed he is with our vehicle. And for me to be this close to a wild animal, getting such great views of him, will be a far better and more memorable experience than ever playing with one that is in captivity. Again, that is just my opinion, but I could think of nothing better than exactly what we're doing right now, sitting just meters away from him. And this is interesting. We've got Rose Lee now saying that she is more interested in feeling the paws of young Sindile, which he's just been using to transport himself away from us. I wonder where he's going to go next. He's still behind us. Another viewer who, also on the subject of paws, wanted to know what it would feel like, or actually to compare his hands or her hands to the size of a male lion. And that was Jan. And unless you've got very big hands, I'm sure the paws would be bigger than yours. To now, Sindile. He's just off to the left of our vehicle there. I really wish there was some potential prey for him to hunt. Not because I'm concerned about his hunger, but more for the joy of watching him leap and bound after something. But there doesn't appear to be anything in this area. That could though change at any moment, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware. But But if you are new to the Safari Live experience, I must reiterate that we never know exactly what may happen, and we very often get pleasantly surprised, especially in scenarios like this where I have said that there's nothing around and therefore jinxed it, and he's probably going to prove me wrong shortly. As he stands still, it's incredible how well he blends in. I was chatting earlier that we're so lucky to be allowed to get very close to him in the vehicle. And Sarah's asking if that's been a recent development. Have we noticed him becoming more relaxed with the vehicle quite over the last few weeks? And I think certainly from before, when we didn't spend much time with him, it's only been recently, about 3 months ago, that him and his mother started spending more time here. Look at his tail twitching there. What has he seen? No, continuing. I think it's definitely fair to say he has got more relaxed with the vehicle, but he was never at any stage very scared of it. So I think it's fair to say that he has become accustomed to us. Well, while we loop ahead of him, we're going to send you back to James to see what he's up to, and we'll call you once we've got another good view.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Giga, where we find ourselves far west of Arethusa. Nothing but Cambritum hereroense, the odd leafless knobthorn, and not much else to say for our morning. The leopard eluded us. Andrew is very ravenously hungry apparently. I've told him to shut up and stop complaining, but so we are carrying on in our quest. I did have a brief report on the very squelchy radio that they were following a male leopard on Arethusa somewhere else around here. I suspect quite strongly the same one. I'm just looking on the road here. Those tracks of hyena, and so not much luck on the leopard front. Andrew, there's a female leopard there, look. Is that female tracks, or is it hyena? Hyena tracks. It's quite advantageous having a cameraman who's not a complete gimp in the bush. Indeed, Andrew used to be a guide, didn't you, Andrew?
Oh, for about a year.
For about a year. That must have been a fairly scary thing to see. Anyway, so we're basically just bumbling now. So we are driving along here around about where the Nkahuma Pride was seen last, and they are not here anymore. Obviously, and Daniel, in California, you read or heard something about them being attacked by a hyena, or some hyenas, many hyenas. Well, Daniel, there was an astonishing incident that took place about two days ago. First of all, the Nkahuma Pride killed a buffalo on Elephant Plains to the west of here, and they then went off to have a drink, because that is what lions do when they are full. And then the kill was stolen, well, not stolen, was set upon by a small pride called the Shimungwe Pride, which consists of quite young lions. And they were in turn set upon by 17 hyenas, and they went up 4 different trees when eventually the hyenas managed to chase these lions off. Then Junior came back, and when Junior came back, the 4 lions in the trees apparently thought better of trying to tangle with him. They dropped out of the trees, apparently one of them jumping from a height of about 3 meters, fell to the floor and ran scarped for the west. The hyenas then did the same at the site of the large or rapidly growing junior, and they went off and disappeared, and the Nkuhuma pride then came back. The hyenas then returned, gathered themselves together and attacked the Nkuhuma pride on the buffalo kill. And Junior apparently held it off for quite a long time on his own, before eventually all 6 Nkuhuma pride members were dangling from various trees around the buffalo carcass. So that's what happened to them. And then yesterday they were seen on Simbambili, which is just north of where we are now. Unfortunately, Djuma seems to be an entirely lion-free zone at the moment. Thank you, Daniel. Oh, there's a zebra. Astonishing. One must not look a gift pony in the mouth. Ha 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 ha. You get that one, Andrew? We're just near Arathusa Safari Lodge, and that zebra has possibly been having a drink in what is some of the last water that remains in this area. Very short little tail that one's got. Quite an old one, I think. Clicking joints, and you can see the mane. I don't know if you can see that. The mane is slowly, seemingly starting to fall over, and that's not a very good sign in terms of health of zebras. There is another one just through here. We just might wait and see if it comes. Is it coming, Andrew? There it is. Look at that. Now it's quite interesting. The one in front there, the mane was starting to fall over. This one, the mane is standing up. Now, falling over mane, like I said yesterday, is a sign that health is starting to wane. And I suspect it's probably nutritional health, and much longer tail on that one too, and probably age. And the first one that went past is certainly not in quite as good a nick as that one there, which looks to be in the flush of youth in his prime, a bit like Andrew, but for the embarrassing welt on the front of his head, of course. Right, let us carry on gently. We're going to drive past the dam at Arathusa, and we'll see if anything's there, and then we'll head for home. Riga's battery is mercifully recharged and functioning at optimal. There's a monkey running towards us at great speed. Thank you for X-Ranga, who says I should take the sounds that these Land Rovers make and turn them into a song. I think it would be a fairly unattractive song, to be honest. But I shall now give it some thought. Right, we're going to stop here and say goodbye to you. There are some hippopotami over here in this waterhole. It's been a quiet morning, but some most stunning dawn I suspect I've ever seen, with the golden orb of the African sun rising through a honey-coloured mist with some marabou storks feeding in the foreground, and that was the sort of highlight of my morning. So a big thank you to Andrew on camera today. He's disrobed, taken off his balaclava, and he no longer looks like he's about to engage in some form of criminal activity. And obviously a big thanks to Tara and Nikki in the final control room for feeding through your wonderful question. And a huge thanks to all of the comments and questions from all of you. Thank you very much. I do learn so much from you. And we will see you later this afternoon. I am not on drive this morning, so I will this afternoon. I am on drive this morning, I think. Yes, I am. I will see you tomorrow morning during another wonderful African dawn, and I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, whatever you happen to be doing, wherever you happen to be in the magnificent planet that we call home. See you later, and thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Welcome back, and by the time we had got into position here, Sindile was already lying down in the shade of a small Gowrie bush. It looks like a Natal Gowrie bush that he's seeking refuge under, and it's the Gowries that are the major source of green at this time of the year. Most other trees have lost their leaves or they've been eaten, but the magic and Natal Gowries have got very, very acidic leaves that are not tasty at all, and thankfully, because it's now providing Sindile with some shade and a refuge from the sun. It's going to get a lot hotter today, probably up to 25 degrees Celsius, and I'm guessing he's probably not going to move too far in the course of the day. Well, what a great morning it's been here on Djuma and Arathusa Private Game Reserves. We got lucky when we found this guy, because if we hadn't, I'm not sure how much other action was around, but thankfully the Game Drive channel here on Djuma should be back up and running this afternoon, and that way we'll be able to communicate with the other guides and share secrets about what's happening out here. Anyway, a very big thanks for following the show, sending through all your comments, suggestions and helpful facts and info along the way, and also thanks for sending through some funny thoughts about hypothetically deciding which animal you would like to pet if you could have the choice to. I think some people got onto elephants in the end, so they strayed a bit from the cats, but no problem, and thanks for letting us know all your thoughts. Thanks, Bryan, good job, and thanks to Nikki and Tara for directing the show. We're going to leave you for the last minute with Sleepy Sindile. Have a great day or night, depending where in the world you are, and be sure to tune in to the Sunset Safari. It's going to be Brent and myself heading out in search of any action. Also, just a friendly reminder before you go that as of Friday, we will be heading out half an hour earlier in the morning and half an hour later in the afternoon. And that's simply to fit in with the changing seasons.